After years of whispers, theories, and development updates, it's fair to say that with just 2 years until release, Payday 3 is really beginning to gain some solid interest and, dare I say it, hype. But not quite everything is peachy among the Payday community when it comes to the upcoming third entry in the franchise. In fact, one issue in particular has a lot of PC players feeling very concerned. You see, with the recent announcement that Payday 3 has found a publisher in Koch Media, alarm bells began to ring for those in the gaming community who know about the links Koch Media share with Epic Games. Links I'll be exploring in this video. And so a question began to surface that a lot of people are now asking. Will Payday 3 be exclusive to the Epic Games Store? In this video, I'll be exploring the Epic Games Store in particular, why so many people don't like it, what exactly links Payday 3 to it, and finally whether or not I think Payday 3 will be an Epic Games Store exclusive. And yes, that means for once the console players can rest easy as this issue will not impact you in any way whatsoever. I bet it feels good to hear that for a change, eh? I've done a lot of research into this video and so I've decided to split it into 4 chapters. And of course, this will no doubt include every piece of information that regards this situation, as there are just too many facts to include in a single video. So as always, I would welcome your thoughts and opinions on everything mentioned inside and beyond this video as to your thoughts on the Epic Games Store and whether you'd like to see Payday 3 released there. But with all that being said, my name is RedArcher, welcome back to the channel, and today let's talk about whether or not Payday 3 will be an Epic Games Store exclusive. So let's begin this video essay with a bit of background on the Epic Games Store itself, and it first launched on December 6, 2018, as a new PC gaming platform with its own launcher that allowed you to purchase and play PC games via their company, avoiding Steam entirely. This in itself is enough to annoy some people who prefer to access and play all their games in one place, but it barely scratches the surface on the issues with this store. Core features that Steam has possessed for years, such as forums and achievements, are non-existent on this store, making it into a barren version of Steam which feels worlds apart from the gaming community Steam has managed to build over the course of more than a decade. Now, there are some redeeming features to this store, however. For one thing, the store provides games with the ability to turn off reviews on their storm pages should they fall victim to, for example, review bombing. But for another, the standout part of the Epic Games Store, and something that will be part of a lot of the discussions of this video, is their dramatic improvement on the industry standard 70-30 revenue split between game developers / publishers and the platforms their games are listed on. Now, that might be a bit too much business speak for you, so I'll break it down a little bit more in detail. You see, whenever a game is sold on PC, console, or mobile, basically any platform a game can be played on, the chances are the company selling the game to you on their platform, such as Steam, Microsoft, or Sony, will take 30% of that sales revenue and send the remaining 70% off to the parties involved in developing and publishing the game. Enter Epic CEO Tim Sweeney, who was quoted saying that he believed this was far more than the platforms deserved, and claimed that these platforms could easily operate on only 8% revenue share as opposed to 30%. And so for this reason and several more, the Epic Games Store launched, but the store only took 12% of the revenue as opposed to the industry standard 30%. Didn't Tim just say that 8% was enough for these stores? He did? Weird. Obviously, this revenue split is very appealing to game developers and publishers who are making games for PC, as it means they're getting far more of the revenue than if they distributed it via Steam. And so in the process, Epic Games have clearly put Steam in their crosshairs with the aim of being direct competition to them, and potentially at some point hoping to dethrone Steam as the go-to platform for PC game purchasing. So with that context set, it's time to get into the nitty-gritty as to why people aren't very big fans of Epic Games. It's probably no surprise that the improved revenue share on the Epic Games Store interested several developers of major games in recent years. With this peak in interest came several very serious issues with game releases. The most infamous and frequently referenced example of this is that of Metro Exodus. You see, the game was promised to launch on Steam on February 15th, 2019, with pre-orders being available for that game far before this release date. And yet, just 2 weeks before launch, on January 28th, it was announced that the game was actually going to be released exclusively on Epic Games' store for the first year of release. Unsurprisingly, a massive controversy was formed as Steam players were outraged that they wouldn't get access to the game they'd already pre-ordered, since it was already confirmed Steam would be getting the game at launch and Epic Games hadn't even factored into the equation. After a large number of complaints were issued towards this situation, Steam pre-orders were in fact honoured, but all of the physical pre-orders for the game were converted to Epic Games Store versions, meaning that anyone who pre-ordered it physically was not getting the Steam version that they'd asked for. But nobody else could purchase the game after that, and Epic Games gained its 1-year exclusivity, despite it only being announced less than a month before launch. launch. Another very high profile example was the release of Shenmue 3, a game which had been backed via Kickstarter for 4 years with the promise of a Steam release upon completion, but once again Epic swooped in and screwed it up. Not long before the game's release, Shenmue 3 was announced to be an Epic Games Store timed exclusive yet again, causing exactly the same amount of drama and fuss from backers, understandably, who'd backed the game thinking it was going to be released on Steam. After a lot of complaints, yet again, Kickstarter backers who had requested the Steam version were given the option to either accept the version on Epic, get a physical Windows version, get the version for PS4, or receive a refund that was paid for by Epic Games. Both of these issues were very high profile and very controversial, but they aren't the only games to see this issue arise, as games like The Division 2 were also swiped up by Epic Games. What's most troubling about moves like these, however, are the underhanded way in which they're done, allowing people to pre-order titles on Steam and making it common knowledge that the game will release on that platform, only for Epic Games to slide in and mess it all up in the 11th hour. It's like if Santa came down your chimney on Christmas Eve, left you a PS5 and an Xbox Series X under the tree, only for Swiper the Fox to slide in after he's gone, take the consoles, and leave you with a note saying finders keepers. It's a very underhanded way of doing things, and one a lot of members of the PC gaming community have not taken to very kindly. And at the end of the day, who can really blame them? And while it isn't directly tied to the store, it's also worth very briefly mentioning the more shady business practices that Epic Games as a company have been responsible for. And while there are no doubt lots of examples, the one that I'm going to focus on that comes to mind most prevalently is the Fortnite versus Apple and Google lawsuit situation, something that is still currently ongoing. For those of you that didn't follow it, here's a very brief rundown. As you all know, Epic's CEO had gone on the record saying that game stores were taking too much money in revenue shares. To combat this, Fortnite received an update on August 13th, 2020, Payday 2's 7th birthday weirdly enough, which reduced the price of buying Fortnite's in-game currency V-Bucks with real money by 20%. The catch, however, was that you could only do it through Epic themselves, another underhanded attempt to create friction, since it meant that Apple and Google were inadvertently now charging more than Epic for V-Bucks. To absolutely nobody's surprise, within hours the game was removed from iOS and Android stores due to a clear violation of their terms of service, followed by Epic Games filing lawsuits against both Google and Apple. But to top it all off, if that wasn't weird enough, Fortnite then started a ridiculous ad campaign that was clearly prepared in advance. Seriously, you just can't tell me this wasn't all prepared for. Titled 1980 Fortnite, in which Apple was depicted as some kind of cruel dictator, even turning their CEO Tim Cook into a Fortnite skin called the Tart Tycoon. The aim of which was clearly to indoctrinate younger players against Apple, causing friction and leading on their younger, more naive players without providing them the full context. Needless to say, this is about as far from okay as possible, and I'm sure it becomes easier for a lot of people to see why people won't support the Epic Games Store when the company themselves is just as shady as some of their store practices. So with all of that being said, where exactly does Payday 3 fit into this? Well, as mentioned in the opening to this video, Koch Media are now signed on as the publishers of Payday 3. As a result, Koch handle the marketing and publishing for Payday 3. In other words, they handle where the game is released. Why is this such a problem, I hear you ask? Well, in fact, THQ revealed that during the heat of the Metro Exodus controversy, that Koch Media were behind the game becoming an Epic Games exclusive. It was down to them that shift in the last few weeks before the game's release even happened to begin with. And what's more, Koch Media's CEO has gone on the record several times both before and after the game's launch in support of the store, citing the revenue split as the main draw in working with Epic, to nobody's surprise of course. And so Payday 3 comes into the equation. The publishing agreement between Starbreeze Studios and Koch Media has already been signed, and was signed before it was even announced to the public. As a result, Starbreeze have handed the keys to the game's publishing over to Koch Media, and now have zero control over where the game is distributed beyond the umbrella term of just PC and consoles. Of course, we can't see the agreement ourselves, but it's fair to say that leaves the door more than open for Koch Media to publish the game on the Epic Games Store and take advantage of that extra revenue. Personally, I have no doubt at all that Overkill would much prefer to see Payday 3 released on Steam instead of the Epic Games Store, for reasons I shall explain shortly, but Overkill could now cry and complain to Koch Media as much as they want about the game becoming an Epic Games Store exclusive, but they would still have no power over Koch Media. It is entirely down to Koch where that game winds up, and that's where a lot of the concern now lies for the future of Payday 3's PC version. And so we come to the question that led me to make this video, and one I will now answer as best as I can. Will Payday 3 be an Epic Games Store exclusive on PC? Well, the problem is, it's hard to say with absolute certainty. As I've said, it's very clear that Koch Media is a huge supporter of the Epic Games Store, and would very easily put Payday 3 out on their launcher, but here are the reasons why I think it would be a very bad idea for them to make that decision. Firstly, Payday 2 has the largest Steam community group in existence. Over 7.2 million players have joined it since the game's launch in 2013, with the closest competition competition being the 2.8 million players in CSGO's Steam group or the 1.8 million in the group for Dota 2. This means that the Payday 2 Steam community group has more members than both CSGO's and Dota 2's combined. And so regardless of the player counts you might see on Steam every day, no game has ever had such a united community via Steam than Payday 2. As such, I am sure we can all agree how ridiculously foolish it would be to throw all of that away for the sake of potentially a little more revenue, especially since Payday 2's community has been very loyal to Overkill despite some of their more public mistakes over the years. Secondly, while this was never specifically shared to the general public, Payday 3 has already been cited to release on Steam in several company presentations that I've personally reported on in previous videos on this channel. As such, we would potentially be looking at another Metro situation if Koch Media suddenly decide to send Payday 3 over to Epic Games. Now granted, this situation would not be anywhere near as bad as Metro, since for one thing, pre-orders are not yet available for Payday 3 on any platform, let alone Steam, and second off, as I said, this information was not made generally public. But now players are beginning to see that Steam was Overkill's plan for Payday 3's release. Changing that would create unnecessary friction in the community, since a Steam release is something that, while not shared publicly, is out there for the public to find if you look for it, and I certainly did. Thirdly and finally, general consumer approval overall would be irreparably tarnished should Payday 3 release on the Epic Games Store. As you'd expect, fewer PC players would actually purchase the game if it was to release on that store for PC, and while that sounds like an obvious reason that Koch Media would look to when deciding where to publish the game, I honestly feel as though this is a null point, since even after the Metro incident, the only issue Koch's CEO saw with the events that transpired was that they weren't able to announce the Epic agreement earlier, and said quite assuredly that publishing Metro Exodus via the Epic Games Store first was anything but a mistake. They'd probably see the extra revenue share as a good trade-off for reduced sales and just put the game on Epic anyway. However, it is worth pointing out that in a statement released before Metro Exodus's launch in 2019, the CEO also said that funding for developers was a key reason to put Metro on the Epic Games Store. Payday 3 is a different ballgame, as that game is now fully funded, so perhaps that reduces the need for the extra revenue from a development standpoint, potentially being a point in favour of the game launching on Steam instead of Epic. So to conclude, while we currently don't know for certain whether or not Payday 3 will be an Epic Games Store exclusive, and we probably won't know for a while yet, it's fair to say that it would be a very bad idea for Payday 3 to be launched on Epic's platform instead of Steam. If it did release on Epic Games Store first, I would imagine it would wind up on Steam a year later, as is typical with past releases of other games such as Metro, but hopefully this is not a situation we'll ever have to see become a reality. Now, I don't personally have an issue with another company making their own PC game store and launcher. EA, Ubisoft, and Activision all have their own, to name a few. The issue arises, however, when the platform that stands in the way of Steam is far less dense in features and comes from a company who are known for more underhanded business practices, as evidenced by their behaviour in recent years. If I wanted to see people being shady and underhanded to get what they want, I'd kick my feet up and watch Tin Star or Game of Thrones. But this isn't a fictional TV show, it's the real world, and these kinds of practices don't go unnoticed by people. If Epic Games can prove that they'll behave in a more sensible manner, as the platforms they're so desperate to compete with already do, then I'd have no doubt that opinions towards them would improve at least partially. But as of right now, however, this just hasn't been shown, and that is why there's so much doubt and concern every time evidence suggests a big name title might be the next victim of Epic Games. And as I mentioned before, with Payday 2 being as popular as it is on Steam, out of all the games that could transition to Epic, this would be the most damaging one in my own personal opinion. And so that concludes my video essay talking about whether or not Payday 3 will become an Epic Games Store exclusive. I am sorry that right now I can't give you a definitive yes or no answer, but the truth of the matter is we won't know until Overkill or Epic Games or Koch Media, whoever it might be, announce where the game is going. And what worries me even more is even if they do announce it's coming out on Steam, it's entirely possible Epic Games could swoop in at the last minute and steal the game yet again. Right now, all we can do is wait and hope for more information further down the line, but more importantly, I want to know what all of you think in the comment section down below as to whether or not you think Payday 3 will or should release on the Epic Games Store. Let me know all your thoughts in the comment section down below, but that brings an end to this video. If you have enjoyed it, please do give it a thumbs up as it shows me you liked this video essay and would like to see me do more of these in the future. And if you are new around here and you haven't yet subscribed, please do consider doing so, as it's quick, it's free, and I will always love you for doing so, and you'll never miss out on any future content from this channel. If you aren't following me yet on my socials, my Twitch is twitch.tv/RedArcherLive, Twitter and Instagram are both at RedArcherLive, and if you want to support me on Patreon, a little bit extra beyond watching and commenting on my videos, then the link to that is also in the description. It'll be getting a pretty cool revamp in the coming weeks, so if you want to be a part of that, keep an eye out and support me over on that website. Donations are never expected, but always appreciated and help to support myself and the channel to keep more content coming out for all of you. But with all that being said, thank you all so much for watching. I truly do appreciate all the support. I will see you all very soon in another video. Until then, look after yourselves, stay safe, and I'll see you all soon.